Well, hello and welcome back to the Metabolic Alchemist. And today we're going to talk about something that I was told is becoming a trend on social media lately. And you know what I'm talking about. It starts with a C and ends with an E. I know that's confusing. It's cottage cheese. Who would have thought that that is now a trend? It's everywhere. People are blending it into their ice cream, their pasta sauce, cooking doughs. You know, this high protein, low carb, super convenient food that you get off the shelf is out there everywhere. And I've got some questions about whether this is a good idea or not. So, as a naturopath who works with women over 40, I need to be really honest about this conversation and whether this trend is the right trend for us to jump onto. That cottage cheese that you're eating every day, well, it could be making your symptoms worse. So, welcome to the podcast today, ladies. Let's dive in. Today, we're going to be covering why this trend is so appealing, the science behind dairy and hormones, who is likely going to react to this yummy food that everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. Maybe there's some better alternatives. I'm going to give you a few of those as well. So let's talk about this obsession. Why is everyone so obsessed with cottage cheese? You know, when I think about cottage cheese, it reminds me of I think it was like the 80s maybe. I remember maybe that was when I first tried cottage cheese, and then, or maybe it was the 90s, 80s, 90s. Might have been when I was kind of out of school or just getting out of school, and I used to have cottage cheese with asparagus or avocado, salt and pepper. Yum! I can still remember that taste, and you know, there's no dispute here, ladies. Cottage cheese is freaking yummy. But before I explain why cottage cheese is problematic, let's talk about why you're drawn to it in the first place, because I totally get it. You're juggling full-time work, kids' schedules, household management, your health, you know, which is usually last on the list. Then when something promising high protein with zero effort is handy at the convenience store or the supermarket when you're just walking past, of course you're going to be interested in it. What makes it so appealing? Well, it's so ridiculously simple. You just scoop it out, put it on whatever, and away you go. There's no cooking required, straight from container to bowl, zero meal prep. And look, let's be honest, the viral recipes that people are making with cottage cheese look super yummy, amazing. The ice creams, the pasta sauces, the pancakes, all over TikTok and Instagram. And, you know, the numbers look good too. You know, 12 to 14 grams per half a cup of cottage cheese. That's a lot. You know, half a cup is literally get you a quarter of your daily requirements or just under of protein for the day. It's super, super handy. It's low carb, tick the box there, low calorie. So it's going to fit into those amazing Goldilocks macros of mine. It's also budget friendly, which is handy. So it's cheaper than animal meat or protein powder. And influencers love it because it looks like you're eating clean. Nice and healthy on your bowl, on your plate. Looks amazing, right? Well, that's where we need to kind of have a talk. Because what works for maybe a 25-year-old fitness influencer is not necessarily going to work for a 45-year-old woman in menopause or anyone in perimenopause. I wish we could be back when we're 25 and everything works perfectly. But here's what's really happening in your body, guys. Cottage cheese is packed with something called casein. It starts with a C and ends with an N. C-A-S-E-I-N. Casein. It's the main protein in cow's milk dairy. And here's the thing about casein. It's not about lactose intolerance, guys. That is the other protein in cow's milk. This is about how casein affects your hormones and in particular, inflammation. So let's be clear first before we go into inflammation. Not everyone reacts to casein, okay? Some people can tolerate dairy perfectly fine. And so if you've got the genes that were like brought up on the Irish cows farm, and you can have dairy till the cows come home, literally no issues, then this may not be for you, okay? But here's who's more likely to react. Women over 40 in perimenopause or menopause, where your hormones are already shifting, you've got inflammation already, inflammatory threshold is kind of a little bit lower in our age group, your gut becomes a little bit more sensitive. Women who have pre-existing conditions like polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, whether you're still having painful periods, stubborn weight gain, insulin resistance, autoimmune issues, gut issues, this is really for you guys, right? So let me explain I've talked about the stress bucket before, right? So the stress bucket theory. Well, this is kind of still in that bucket theory. Think of it as your inflammation bucket rather than your stress bucket, which is the same thing, right? But anyway, everyone has a different bucket size. Some people can handle dairy because their bucket has more An Irish bucket has probably got more room than, somebody else's bucket. But anyway, your inflammation bucket is going to be different, right? But if you're already dealing with this hormonal chaos, gut issues, chronic sleep, chronic stress, other inflammatory, intolerances, allergies, migraines, pain, the list can go on. Your bucket is already full, right? And casein might be the thing that just kind of tips you over the edge of that bucket. The question isn't, is dairy bad for everybody? The question is it right for you right now? Is this something that your body can handle? And if you're listening to this podcast because you can't lose weight, you're bloated all the time, you are gaining weight around the middle, your hormones are a mess, you're exhausted, you have pain and inflammation, and any other chronic health issue, your bucket is already full, and dairy is going to probably make that a lot worse for you. So let's talk about the research. The Harvard School of Public Health studied over 47,000 women, and they found a strong link between dairy and hormonal issues. And when you eat casein and your bucket is already full, then casein triggers inflammatory pathways, especially if you've got gut permeability. Second, cortisol can spike. When inflammation triggers cortisol release, cortisol is the master hormone switch, right? So when cortisol goes up, everything else goes down. And you'll hear that in the Cortisol Conspiracy, episode 1. Thirdly, our thyroid will slow down, right? This is the hormone cascade, guys. High cortisol suppresses thyroid function, your metabolism slows down, then you gain weight, then you get fatigued, then you get brain fog, and lastly, we've got that insulin resistance. I've talked about this a number of times as well. So your cells stop listening to insulin, you start storing fat instead of burning fat, especially around your middle, in perimenopausal years, plus you get more sugar cravings, and they get this cascade. And this is this complete hormone chaos. All of this starts to affect and worsen estrogen, progesterone imbalance, worsens perimenopausal symptoms, makes weight loss nearly impossible. So the question is that cottage cheese you're eating for convenience really what you want? If you're in this high risk group, you're already getting all those symptoms, isn't it really just going to make it all a whole lot worse? Is the convenience worth it, really? Let's just weigh it up. You've got goals. I want to have less inflammation, less stress on my body and lose weight, but I've got the convenience of cottage cheese here. I know it's yummy, guys, but focus. That perimenopausal perfect storm is upon us. during perimenopause, you're already dealing with declining hormones, slowing metabolism, reducing insulin sensitivity, and you're getting more inflamed overall. And adding dairy on top of that, whether it's cottage cheese or cow's milk, for example, it's like throwing gas on a fire. Okay, so let's talk about what I see clinically in practice. About 15 to 20% of clients can do fine with cow's milk dairy. They can put it into their coffee, they're fine. We're not eating cereal and stuff like that these days anyway, so it's not really crazy. We can remove it in the first 4 weeks in our magic, and when they bring it back in, there's no difference. There's no reactions, there's no issues. So they can keep it in their diet. You can have a cottage cheese, ladies, if you've removed it and you've brought it back in and there's been no change, no wobbles, right? And these women usually tend to have fewer hormonal issues. They've got relatively good guts. They're probably not insulin resistance bucket. They're usually close to their ideal weight anyway. So these guys they're okay, right? But the other 80%, this is me included, notice huge differences when we remove it from our diet. So in the 4 weeks of Metabolic Magic, in my foundation program, we remove everything. We go pure paleo, right? And this is how we start to fix the foundation. We remove anything that's inflammatory, gluten included, but dairy is the main one, right? Less bloated, sleeping better, more stable energy, losing weight, reduced pain, clearer skin, all of that, right? We're getting all these amazing results in these 4 weeks. Then afterwards, this is maybe when we might test that. Now, I don't really advocate bringing dairy back in, but say, for example, you're out and you're like, hey, I'm going to have the cottage cheese or I'm going to have the halloumi or whatever. Then do you get a reaction? That tells you everything that you need to know, right? Because in that 80%, dairy consistently worsens people's symptoms. Their endometriosis might flare up. They might have more painful periods. They might have more issues with their belly fat. Okay, so it's time to start to draw a correlation between food and symptoms. This is the easiest win. Sometimes I say this, okay, it's not about working harder at exercise and it's not about calorie sacrificing. It's about fixing the foundation, but also understanding what your wobbles are, your unique drivers. Some of those are going to come from food. Just by reducing carbohydrates or removing those food groups, you can get huge shifts. And we're not adding in HRT, extra supplements, extra herbs. We're not doing anything more. We're just changing the composition of things. So start to understand that the connection between casein and the gut lining can create a leaky gut, which triggers more inflammation and that creates this hormonal cascade. So when we remove it for those 4 weeks in the foundation, you can see that you can't balance hormones on an inflamed foundation. When we test it and we bring it back and you get all those symptoms back, we know that you are in the no dairy category. Why this matters? Well, look, it's going to make the difference between whether you hit your goals or not, whether you're healthy or not. It's not about having it maybe occasionally on a weekend or when you're out having a freedom day and enjoying life, whatever. This is about consistently. If you're having it in your diet every day, then it's just going to build up and that's going to create more inflammation. Your body's not going to be able to handle it, and then you're going to overflow that inflammation bucket. And look, it might not be just dairy. It could be gluten. It could be seed oils. I talk about all the time. It might be over-exercising. But here's why I focus on dairy in the practice, especially in the first 4 weeks. It's the most common trigger for inflammation. It flies under the radar all the time. When I see people with skin conditions, eczema, dermatitis, psoriasis, especially, teenage children, boys and girls, anyone who has a lot of congestion, mucus, anyone who's got mucus, automatically I'm like, take out dairy. Dairy is inflammatory. It's mucus forming, okay? And because it tastes so good, everyone wants to eat it. It's like, no, just take it out. You'll feel so much better. And I know you're all thinking, I can't give up on all my cheese, and that's fair enough. But there is different types of casein. Hooray! Not all dairy is equal. A1 casein comes from cow's milk dairy, and that's more inflammatory, okay? Is found in goats and sheep's cheese, and it's less inflammatory. Hooray! Yeah, but you gotta make sure not all feta is made from goats and sheep. Sometimes they trick you, and it's made from cow's milk dairy. So always make sure that if you are going for a feta cheese, for example, make sure that comes from either a goat or a sheep, or a combination, not from a cow. So you've got those options: goat's cheese, sheep's cheese, pecorino or manchetta. They're all really, really good. But I would still remove them for the first 4 weeks anyway. I always do that. Just go cold turkey 4 weeks, and you can start to bring it back in. Watch for any bloating. If you get bloated, remove it. Skin issues, flare-ups, eczema, psoriasis, breakouts, remove it. Your weight plateaus, stalls, remove it. Energy crushes, keep it out. These are all the things that you're going to be trying to pick up on, the subtle differences. Make sure that it's just once a day, not your main protein. So don't go and have a whole bowl of dairy. Just add it in once a day in one of your meals and see how you go. If you've got endometriosis, PCOS, period pain, autoimmune conditions, stubborn weight, all of that, just keep it out. So what are some other alternatives then for people who can't have any A1 or A2 casein milk products in their diet? Well, we want convenience, don't we? We want convenient, quick protein. We want something that will work sweet or savory and is budget friendly. Okay, so here are my top tips for paleo alternatives that are high protein whole foods. Wild caught canned fish. So you can get it. You can get them in the glass containers. You just check either online. I know Goodness Me has them online, or if you've got a really good whole food pantry nearby, Health Fits All, you can get wild caught canned fish. Simple, easy. Salmon, tuna, sardines, 25 to 30 grams per can. Huge amount of protein. High in omega-3s, zero prep. Mash it with some whole egg mayonnaise, avocado, pop that in onto salad. It's the same as cottage cheese. Makes it life easy, right? Don't forget hard-boiled eggs. They're super easy and cheap and quick. Done. Make a whole heap on the weekend. Leave them in the fridge. Take it out, mash it, cream it, do whatever. Don't forget a barbecue chicken. Always handy to have. Either make one yourself or buy one pre-cooked. I always have a roasted chicken in the fridge every week, regardless. It's just easy. I can pull bits off, throw it into salads, throw it into bowls, eat it on the go. 25 grams per serving, done. What about coconut yogurt? Amazing, unsweetened. You can have it, savory or sweet. I make amazing dressings, salad dressings with coconut yogurt. So there are alternatives than your cottage cheese, okay? So barbecue chicken, hard-boiled eggs, well-caught fish, and done. Make life easier. Make sure that you've had no dairy in your diet for 4 weeks, then bring it back in and see how you feel. Your body's going to tell you. That's the easiest, cheapest way to test whether you have a reaction to dairy or not. So that's me, ladies. Thanks for being here today. I'm glad I got to deep dive into the cottage cheese controversy. And if that helps, make sure you tag a friend and send them into my subscription list. I look forward to talking more. If you've got any ideas, make sure you email me, and I can come up with some more social media hacks if you like. Until next time, ladies, I am the Metabolic Alchemist, Carly Gallagher, and here's to your health. And that's a wrap. Phew. If something clicked for you today, I've got all the links to my favourite products, supplements, and exactly where to buy them waiting for you in the show notes. No hunting required. Want more personalised support? I totally get it. This journey can be overwhelming when you're doing it all on your own. Whether you're ready to jump into my one-on-one coaching programs or test it out first in my online metabolic flash course, I've got your back. Just head to the show notes for the links to those pages or my website, inner-alchemy.com.au, and let's turn those frustrating symptoms into your comeback story. Because honestly, the best version of you isn't in your past. She's waiting on the other side of these new rules. Until next time, remember, work smarter, not harder. Thanks for sticking around. I'll see you in the next episode.